Who says it can't be Pride Month every month? I just wanted to say how much I appreciate lesbians, gay people, bisexual people, transgender people, queer people, two-gender people, intersex people, asexual people, and plus. I needed to say this because we're going to be talking about how some anime treats these LGBTQ2IA plus topics, and I'm not going to be 100% positive about it, so keep in mind that I'm criticizing these creators, not the LGBTQ community. So if you're, in that group, don't be offended. We're going to go through a bunch of these shows to see whether or not they deal with these topics well or not. We're also going to measure how gay these shows are by using this. This is the gayometer. It basically measures how gay a show is. It's not objective, it's my opinion. Yeah, as you can see from left to right, it increases in gayness. Yeah, we're gonna be looking at a few shows. So at our first checkpoint is Diet Gay. These are basically shows where the homosexual themes are barely touched upon. In fact, in some of these cases, it's very questionable whether or not these shows are gay or not. So the first show is Madoka Magica. So the relationship between Homura and Madoka is actually pretty good. So in previous episodes, Madoka is being denied from becoming a magical girl by Homura, and you want to figure out why. So it turns out in a different timeline, Madoka becomes a magical girl, but it turns out she basically dies all the time. And Homura doesn't like that because she really likes Madoka as a person. She's really nice to her, and she's very selfless. Homura uses her wish when she becomes a magical girl to go back in time to help get Madoka to live. But in the end, Madoka keeps dying. Homura keeps going back in time to try to save Madoka from dying and becoming a witch. And in the process, she becomes like this cold-hearted badass who gets like fucking guns and shit. And it's pretty cool. I really like this backstory because it's very understandable how Homura could be gay for Madoka, because it's like, oh, Madoka was so nice to me, She's the only person who accepted me and all that. You can understand how that relationship goes from, friendship to, I guess, romantic. At least in Homura's mind. I don't know if Madoka thinks the same way. But there's also the motivation that the world is going to end if Madoka actually becomes a witch because of how many times Homura went back in time. Even if you don't see the homosexual relationship, it's still a good backstory because it gives a lot of context for the rest of the show. Like, you could understand why Homura is acting the way she does in the rest of the show. Whether or not you like the gay stuff, it still makes sense for Homura to try to prevent Madoka from becoming a magical girl. On the other hand, the stuff with Sayaka and Kyoko is just really fucking weird. In the beginning, Kyoko and Sayaka are sort of hostile towards each other because since, they're both magical girls, they have to fight over, like, territory to, get the leech seeds or whatever to, keep going on. Later on in the show, they begin to understand each other, like Kyoko says her, like, fucking backstory or whatever. It's like, okay, cool, It's like, she's telling this to just Sayaka, it's like, oh, maybe it's an intimate thing. They talk about their internal issues, but it never comes off as, like, them, like, developing a romantic relationship. Then it's really fucking confusing that in Rebellion, the movie, they're like, oh, Sayaka, I miss you, Kyoko, I miss you. It's like really just so weird. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Someone else can explain it, that'd be great, but I don't fucking get this at all. Next show in this category is Little Witch Academia. If you remember my Little Witch Academia video from a while back, you would know this is the thumbnail. Guess what that blurred background is? It's this. I've been well aware of the Naoko ship for a very long time. I like how the alternative name is Accordion, which is also really funny. This one I don't really get either. For pretty much the entire show, they're just rivals. Like, I don't see how they would become romantic partners. Diana doesn't like Akko because she misuses magic and, gets her in trouble a lot of the time. She lets Akko know that she doesn't like that. Akko thinks that Diana's a lame narc who's like, oh, you can't have fun, you can't bend the rules a little bit, Even though what Ako does sometimes is very dangerous. Like, so much so that the reputation of witches gets a bad rap. She gets in so much trouble that, you know, people potentially get hurt because of her. Eventually, Ako begins to understand Diana as, you know, more of Diana's backstory. And it's like, oh, they become more friends than rivals over time once they, you know, get a deeper understanding of each other. Again, it doesn't really come off as them, you know, being gay for each other. Since this ship is so popular, people debate whether or not, oh, is it actually real in the show or not? People, you know, argue this all the time, but I think it's somewhere in the middle. There's this tweet that has floated around for a while that people point to, and we're gonna be looking at that right now. So this is the one here. This is a post by this animator here, works at a studio, whatever. And they talked to some of the staff that worked on Little Witch Academia a little bit after the show came out. And this is basically like paraphrased like notes of what they asked and how that conversation went. And they get to the topic of romantic interests within the show. You know, they talk about the relationship between Andrew and Ako. They ended up making Ako and Andrew like just friends, not really a romantic relationship. So they basically asked, okay, they want to see, oh, are there characters that they would have wanted to have a romantic relationship? And Ako's voice actor says, well, I believe Ako, if she needs that kind of development, she already has Ursula and Diana anyway. So it's basically saying like, oh, they didn't do it in the show. If they wanted a romantic relationship, they would do it with Ako and Diana. It's not in the show, but if they would make more, they would do it. Again, it's in between. Some people say no, which is partially correct because it wasn't in the actual show, but the yes people are kind of right because they would put it in the show if they wanted to. There's also this one image Yo Yoshinari drew, allegedly, that I found on the internet, where it's Ako and Diana in a steamy pose. I can't show it to you. Maybe I could show the link on screen because it's a little too steamy for YouTube. I can't verify that it was posted on like his account or anything, but it does look like his art style, so I'll believe you on that. So they definitely do like the ship, it's just that they didn't put in the show. Next show is Hibike Euphonium. So people say that Hibike Euphonium is like a gay show, but there's so little development between these characters who are supposedly in a romantic relationship that a lot of the time it goes over your head. I sifted through so much of this show, and the best way I could find it is through clips. The show is more about the character's relationship with music, right? Kumiko here is like, I don't want to play the euphonium anymore, but she like learns to love it again, I guess. And Reina over here, it's not showing in this scene, she's like, oh, I want to be the best trumpet player. And the characters want music to, you know, stay together as friends. I know it looks kind of eerie, but from what I've read online, it seems that Kyoto Animation wanted this show to be more gay, but like the original story wasn't really intended to be that way or whatever. Yeah, but apparently in the original story, they don't actually become lovers and they just stay friends, you know. They want to stay close friends because, you know, they're childhood friends and all that. And plus, for me, all this shit just doesn't register as, you know, gay. I feel like I'm a dumbass for not getting this bullshit. A lot of these kinds of shows are really cryptic about it, and they never like confirm anything. And plus the shows are so focused on other things that it sort of just flies over my head. And like, I wanna understand it. And I see all these people just talking about, oh yeah, this show's gay, when again, they don't really give me enough. And I'm watching the same show, right? And I don't see it at all. Like, dude, like, is Haikyuu supposed to be gay? I don't get it. Like, all I see is a fucking volleyball show. Like, people are saying like, oh yeah, you know, these characters are totally, you know, into each other and all that. But it's like, no, it's just, I see a volleyball show. Is it even supposed to be gay? It's very confusing to me. I don't know. Moving on from that, we have the next tier, which is light gay. Like, these shows aren't so cryptic about whether characters are homosexual or not, but it doesn't really take it that seriously. These shows they're clearly gay, but it's mostly humorous shows. So Dragon Maid does take itself seriously, but it's not really within the romantic relationships. And we'll talk about that here. Obviously, Dragon Maid has a bunch of lesbians in it. Like, Toru literally becomes Kobayashi's servant. Yeah, Toru's always like, oh, I fucking love you, Kobayashi. Kobayashi has like a dragon fetish, you know. Forehead girl fucking ahegaos for Akana. Whatever, it's kind of weird, but I've seen worse. A lot of these, you know, homosexual relationships come off as a little bit jokey. They do seem sincere, but it's just that more of all the serious shit comes around the characters' like internal worldviews. Toru's dad is like really pissed at her for being nice to humans or whatever, and Kobayashi basically tells him to fuck off, and it sort of challenges like, you know, the dragon's worldview of like being angry and fucking killing humans and each other or whatever. But overall, the show is just like very sincere and like how it deals with things for the most part. It's just that a lot of the, you know, gay stuff is humorous, so that's why it's in this category. Yuri Yuri is basically like this Yuri comedy show. Like, it has the name fucking Yuri in the name. Obviously it's gonna be, you know, lesbian, but it's just a comedy show. It's not really taking itself so seriously. That's why it's in this category. Another comedy Yuri show is Yuri Seijin Naoko-san. It's like about this alien who wants to turn the world lesbian. Like, again, something that's more so a comedy than it is about its LGBTQ characters, which are all probably fine. It's just that I wouldn't classify as like super gay shows or whatever, because it's like mostly comedy and not so much about, you know, the character relationships. Keep in mind that this is more of a gradient rather than it having rigid tiers. That's why, you know, all the colors are gradients. And a good example of that is, haha, right here, Flip Flappers. Yeah, in Flip Flappers, the characters are always yelling I love you to each other, so you could interpret that as like a sort of blunt joke, but it could be, you know, gay. They actually might be in love with each other. On one hand, it's a joke, but it's also very vague. That's why Flip Flappers is in the middle there. Next, we have moderate gay, and there's only one show in this, which is Adachi and Shimamura, and it's a very interesting show to say the least. I don't understand this show. It's another one of those shows where it's like, you know, it's obviously trying to be homosexual. Adachi here clearly, you know, develops a crush on Shimamura here. And the show is obviously trying to go towards them becoming a couple later on. But honestly, most of the show is not that at all. It's more so the two characters, Adachi and Shimamura, like monologuing about their own fucking personal insecurities. Adachi's like this, you know, socially inept person who's like very awkward, and she's like, oh, I'm so awkward and I really want to, you know, be with Shimamura or whatever. And like, Shimamura is like this unfeeling sociopath who fucking can't relate to anyone, and they just like monologue to themselves about it. There's a few awkward romantic moments, but that's about how far the romantic development goes in the show. And like, this show is so tone deaf. Like, why is this alien here? Like, this show is like so like melodramatic and like slow paced, and there's just like this goofy alien here. It's like, why is this here? It's so frustrating to watch the show. Like, a lot of the art in the manga and light novels and shit is actually really good. And in the anime, they sort of go for like this more generic anime art style. I like this a lot more because like, it's a little bit more unique. I really like the colors that they use. If the show just had better romantic development and writing as well, I would have been a big fan, but it's unfortunate that they went in this direction. One thing I'm not disappointed in is this song. This is from the anime, by the way. Kimi no Tonari De by Kito Akari. This song is really good. Like, I really love the use of like piano and violin and shit. It's like a really fucking hype song for no good reason. Like, the show is so like boring and slow paced, but like this song is so fucking fire. It's so hype. The way the song like builds itself up, and listen to this fucking instrumental section. Dude, it's so good. The fact this song is so good for a show that isn't really something I'm fond of, I can still have good memories with it even though I didn't like the show that much, which is really nice. Next up is Hard Gay, which only has two shows, Citrus and Sakura Trick. Citrus is on here because there's a lot of, there's quite a few intense lesbian scenes in Citrus, and there's not really much depth behind the show. but there's no real substance to it. There's just too much shit that goes on in Citrus. Like, there's so many like stupid side characters and backstories in it. It distracts itself from the main story of like these two like stepsisters like falling in love and all that. Like, I remember I was watching this show, like in the beginning I was like, oh, this is like kind of going in an interesting direction. As I watched the show, there's so much like stupid bullshit that happens. Like, this character shows up, who the fuck are you? And it comes off as so inconsequential that by the end it's just like, what even is the point of the show? And I was like really frustrated at the end. Like, this show was so pointless, it feels to watch, with it like dilly-dallying so much. Sakura Trick is basically like the character is like, oh, I want to kiss. Oh, let's kiss. I want to kiss. And there's so much like lesbian kissing in this. It's a lot less explicit than Citrus. This is one more explicit scenes, but it's not like as raunchy as Citrus. So much of the show is about like the characters fucking kissing so much. And like all the jokes are about the characters, you know, wanting to be physically intimate and all that. And like, again, there's so little to this show that I feel like it's just so boring. I want to see characters that aren't just about like kissing each other, you know what I mean? They're so like obsessed with the relationship, and it's such a non-realistic portrayal. I know it's for humor, but you should be a little bit more sincere about it, you know? Finally, we have the last tier, which is the ultra gay category. These shows are actually good at what they do. These shows are very gay and they're very sincere and they're pretty good about it. First here is Horomusko. I haven't watched Horomusko, but like plenty of trans people, like the pedantic romantic here, have talked about this show in a very positive light. And like the show is about like the trials and tribulations of like all these trans kids or whatever. Like, obviously I'm not a trans person, so I can't really fully relate to these people. But from what I've heard from other, you know, trans people in the anime community and all that, I heard it's a pretty accurate representation. So I'm just gonna, you know, take their word on it. I have no reason to not believe that this show is a terrible representation of trans kids. So yeah, if you're trans, I'd suggest you watch more Horomusko, even though I haven't watched it. I think there's enough evidence from actual trans people that it probably is a good watch for you if you're interested in that. The other show in the ultra gay category is Given, and I actually really like it. I was initially interested in Given because of the musical aspect, but the stuff about the gay relationships actually won me over. Like, I can understand how, you know, the relationship between the angry guy here and the ginger guy here develops. The ginger guy has such soft boy, gentle guy energy that he comes off as really likable immediately in the show. Later on, you hear a lot about his backstory. It makes you feel like really sad for him. You understand why the fucking angry guy wants to be with him so much, because you, like, as the audience, even you want to like protect him, you know? I really like the balance between the band stuff and the gay stuff here. Like, it really is a band show. Yeah, they talk about like band equipment and yeah, they talk about the music they like. It feels like neither of them are like intruding too much into each other, and both aspects of it feel really genuine. Like, you can tell the characters like actually want to make a band, and it's not like an excuse to make like this gay story. I also like the show's depiction of gay men. I feel like in a good amount of Japanese media, it's still a bit stereotypical, which is kind of not cool. But like in this show, it's actually pretty realistic about it. Like, they're just normal guys who you know, who just so happen to be attracted to other guys, I guess. The only thing you could say is kind of stereotypical is that these guys are kind of hipsterish. Like, this guy here has like piercings and this guy has a ponytail. Ooh, so hipsterish. The fucking ponytail guy works as a barista selling $10 coffees. But other than that, you know, they're just like dudes who like smoke and drink. They like hang out and are able to joke with each other in a platonic way, not in like a gay way. Like, they don't have to remind you all the time that they're gay. Unfortunately, the side plots in Given are a little bit weak. Like in the movie here, it's about how blonde guy has to come to terms with his like boyfriend breaking up with him, since his boyfriend's like, oh, I want to go to Europe to become a professional classical musician, and blonde guy has to like come to terms with that. He gets sexually frustrated enough to want to fuck a ponytail guy. This whole plot line with this fucking blonde guy didn't have to be an hour long. The specials sort of break the balance that the regular show has, where these are like basically like 90% about like the gay plot lines rather than it actually being about the band also in like a genuine way. All of these are like, oh, I want to be with you, babe, or whatever. And it can be a little bit tiring, especially if you're really into the band stuff. I think these specials could have had a better balance. Even then, like, the relationships between the characters are still very respectfully made. They're in the same room together, but they're not horny for each other. That's so refreshing, because, like, there's a good portion of, like, these Yuri shows and yaoi shows that are, like, super raunchy, and the show is, like, actually being genuine. Like, you can see here that, you know, Angry Guy is actually really fucking cares about Ginger Guy, and he wants to protect him, like I've said before. Of course, the music is fire as well, and it better be is a fucking band show. So that's also something to look forward to in Given. I hope they make more music. That'd be cool. And more Given, because the show's really good. Anyway, that's it. If I didn't mention your favorite show, it's either that I didn't think it was interesting enough to talk about, or I just didn't care enough to put it in. There's so many LGBTQ shows out there that you could potentially talk about this shit forever. Like, I didn't even mention Yuri on Ice. I know nothing about Yuri on Ice. I know it was, like, popular back in the day, and there's, like, 2 dudes named Yuri who are gay for each other, but, like, that's it. And, like, that's not worth mentioning in detail when I know nothing. I also wanted to keep this video at least somewhat concise. Also, all the music is from Blue Reflection. Blue Reflection's story might fit in within the Diet Gay or like gay, maybe in the super secret category, so I thought it was fitting to use music from it. I'll probably use more of it in other videos with Adelier music, especially in these kinds of, you know, relaxed, sit down and talk videos. And yeah, bye, bye. Say bye now.